For centuries, Poland was one of Europe's easiest countries to invade. Today, it's becoming one of Europe's strongest military powers. This wasn't random. It was a chain reaction. So how did Europe's historic battlefield become Europe's fortress? The real turning point isn't where most people expect. The answer began centuries before the war in Ukraine. Poland sits on the North European plain, a flat lowland corridor stretching from the Pyrenees to the Urals. Unlike the mountain-shielded terrains of Spain, Italy, or Switzerland, this region offers no natural barriers. No major mountain ranges or deep defensive choke points exist to block marching armies. For centuries, military geographers classified this flat terrain as a high-mobility corridor. It became a superhighway for conquest. The Swedish deluge of 1655 swept across these lowland lands, followed later by Napoleon's campaigns and the imperial expansions of Prussia and Imperial Russia. By 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union used the exact same open pathways to execute a devastating dual invasion. This geography made Poland a natural buffer zone and a recurring battlefield. This exposure explains why a country once erased from the map is now executing Europe's fastest military buildup. But erecting this modern shield meant first confronting a dark pattern of betrayal that would rewrite Polish history. At its peak, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth governed over 1 million square kilometers, stretching from the Baltic toward the Black Sea. Yet this massive power possessed no natural defensive borders. Worse, internal political fragmentation, driven by a system where a single noble's veto could paralyze the entire government, left the state unable to fund a standing army. Even the elite winged hussars could not save an unraveling system. Neighboring empires exploited this weakness. In 3 rapid stages, in 1772, 1793, and 1795, Russia, Prussia, and Austria carved up the territory. The final partition erased Poland from the map for 123 years. Though Polish identity survived, the state became a buffer zone. It left a permanent lesson. Without hard military strength and reliable alliances, sovereignty is a mirage. This vulnerability would soon face its most violent test. At dawn on September 1, 1939, German bombs fell on Wielun, marking the first shots of the Second World War. As Polish forces fought to hold the western border, a secret agreement sealed their fate from the east. On September 17th, the Soviet Red Army invaded, executing the secret protocol of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact that divided Poland into German and Soviet spheres of influence. Caught in a vice between 2 totalitarian empires, the state collapsed. What followed was a systematic campaign of mass execution, deportation, and destruction. Over the next 6 years, Poland lost approximately 6 million citizens, nearly a fifth of its population. By the war's end, constant bombardment and deliberate demolition left the capital of Warsaw 85% destroyed. This catastrophic rupture proved that neutrality and isolated guarantees could not protect Polish sovereignty. But the end of German occupation did not bring true independence, as a new shadow prepared to fall over the ruins. In 1955, Moscow bound Poland to the Soviet sphere through the Warsaw Pact, permanently stationing Soviet troops on Polish soil. But the undercurrents of resistance never stopped. The Solidarity movement forced the regime to the Round Table talks of 1989, launching a democratic transition that dismantled the communist state. By September 1993, the last Russian soldiers withdrew. Poland immediately pivoted west. On March 12, 1999, Poland joined NATO, gaining the collective defense guarantee of Article 5, the principle that an attack on one member is an attack on all. On May 1, 2004, the nation entered the European Union, establishing the economic engine to fund its long-term sovereignty. These were not isolated milestones, but enduring strategic shields. Yet, as Warsaw integrated, it repeatedly warned of a resurgent threat in the east. Were Poland's early warnings historical paranoia or a precise forecast of the storm to come? In August 2008, the war in Georgia verified Warsaw's warnings. When Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, Polish officials urged NATO to deploy permanent Eastern forces. The full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, solidified a threat assessment Poland had maintained for decades. For Warsaw, these crises reinforced an existing evaluation rather than generating new concerns from nothing. While other European capitals only accepted this risk profile after 2022, Polish planners had spent decades preparing for these exact contingencies. This pattern of escalation placed Poland at the very center of Allied defense strategy. But issuing warnings is not the same as building a shield, raising a pressing question. Could political policy translate into credible military capability? Deterrence is not about predicting war. It is about preventing conflict by building a military so capable that any aggression appears too costly to attempt. In 2025, Poland's defense spending reached 4.48% of its gross domestic product, the highest proportion in NATO. While other allies struggle to meet the baseline 2%, Warsaw is nearly doubling it. This financial engine fuels a strict role-based modernization. For the armored force, Poland contracted 232 American Abrams tanks, with initial units already delivered, alongside 180 South Korean K2 tanks. Mobile fires rely on approximately 670 contracted South Korean K9 howitzers and 12 delivered HIMARS rocket launchers. Air defense centers on 4 planned Patriot batteries, while advanced air power rests on 32 contracted F-35 fighters awaiting delivery. This rapid hardware influx runs parallel to a major expansion of active duty and reserve personnel. But signed contracts do not instantly equal combat readiness. Converting these massive orders into fully operational capability requires training, logistics, and time. Yet as these systems arrive, a new threat is testing Poland's fortress not through conventional warfare, but in the shadows of the gray zone. While gray zone challenges build, conventional defense still requires a massive physical foundation, logistics. In plain terms, this is the movement, supply, repair, and sustainment of combat forces. Poland is now the primary transit hub for military assistance entering Ukraine, routing heavy equipment and ammunition through major nodes like Rzeszów-Jastrzębie Airport, Medyka, and Przemysl. This network keeps Allied troops supplied, but its ultimate test lies along a narrow strip of land. The Suwałki corridor, a 100-kilometer-wide passage between Kaliningrad and Belarus, is NATO's only direct land route to the Baltic states. If blocked, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia would be cut off from ground reinforcement, making this corridor the focus of intensive military planning. Modern defense extends into the gray zone, where military and non-military pressure blur. In July 2021, a hybrid crisis erupted on the Belarus border. European governments accused Minsk of flying in thousands of migrants to force them across the frontier. Belarus rejected the charge as disinformation. Warsaw responded by deploying troops, building steel barriers, and securing power grids and water networks against cyber attacks. Sustaining this defense requires deep pockets. Since entering the European Union in 2004, Poland's economy grew rapidly. Total GDP rose from $255 billion to $688 billion in 2022, with GDP per capita climbing from $6,681 to $18,688. This wealth funds dual-use highways and Polska Grupa Zbrojeniowa, the state arms group. Through firms like Huta Stalowa Wola and Mesko, Poland is moving from local assembly of foreign systems to full domestic design. Economic power has become the ultimate foundation for military survival. Warsaw views Russia through a lens of existential risk, a sharper assessment than the diplomatic postures of Paris or Berlin. To manage this threat, Poland maintains a direct bilateral alliance with Washington as its primary security guarantee, while utilizing NATO for collective defense planning and the European Union for economic integration. Though Warsaw and Brussels clash over domestic political policies, their security cooperation remains fully intact. This dual approach has pulled Europe's strategic center of gravity eastward, Ultimately, Poland's rise proves that a modern fortress is built through the alignment of geography, historical memory, economic growth, NATO integration, and long-term security planning. But as Poland secures its land borders, the focus is shifting to the water, where the Baltic Sea is fast becoming one of the world's most strategically important regions. Subscribe to follow this unfolding story. Poland is no longer Europe's historic battlefield. It is the anchor of its defense. As the eastern flank hardens, Warsaw's strategic choices will define the continent's stability. The fortress is built. Now its deterrence must hold.